ora and welcome to Swim Chats, a podcast about swimming. I'm Shona Riddell, a writer, former journalist and swimmer from Wellington, Aotearoa, New Zealand. For each episode, I talk to a different guest from our swim community. Please hit the follow button so you don't miss an episode. If you enjoy the podcast, please share it with a friend or two. You can also leave a 5-star rating, which helps other people discover Swim Chats. And finally, to support the podcast and help me to continue running it, you can become a swim buddy on Patreon for $5 a month. To find out more, visit patreon.com/swimchats. There's a link in the episode show notes. Hi, Laura. Nice to see you and nice to meet you. And I really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, lovely to meet you too, and thanks for the invite.
Cool. So I don't normally open these interviews by talking about people's ages, but I know in your case, it's it's part of your swim story, and I read that you retired from competitive swimming in your mid-20s, and then 8 or so years later, you found yourself returning to it, and you were faster and stronger than you had been before. So would you like to talk a bit about how that came about?
Yeah, so I officially retired. I think I've almost got 2 chapters of swimming now. So I suppose you could call it traditional competitive swimming finished in 2016. I finished on a big high that year with my surf life saving. I broke a world record. Our national team won the pool, the beach, and the overall trophy. So that side was just awesome. But it was also an Olympic year, and I missed the Olympics, my third attempt of 3 different games. And I think it was just a natural, it felt, there was no pressure from anyone else. I just felt like I was ready to move on, go into my career. A lot of my friends at that time had finished their degrees and were now actually in established careers. So I was having that a little bit of, I suppose it feels like it's done. And then, yeah, I suppose 8 years later, I jumped back in for a master's event and just got a big shock by how much speed I'd retained. And I attribute all of that to strength work. And that's simply because I was only swimming once a week in a triathlon squad, which is absolutely not a sprint program. And I think that just, it reignited a love that I've always had. I think one of my favorite parts of swimming is it will be in my life forever. I just love swimming in all its forms, and it just kind of gave me an opportunity to do it my way. And not that I loved my journey with all my different coaches, and I think they helped to unleash a certain athlete in me, and I don't think I could have done better at that stage. But this, I suppose, second chapter, I've just had so much autonomy, and it's a really, really fun experience.
Yeah, cool. And I read that as you were saying, you've had coaches in the past that you really valued, but now you're mostly coaching yourself. Is that quite unusual?
Very unusual in the competitive swimming scene. So my biggest shock of the 2025 was making it back to the national team. So I competed at my very first World Aquatics Championships in the 50 butterfly and the 50 freestyle. So that was 2014 was my last New Zealand swim team. So, that was quite an unreal experience. And I think I'm the first New Zealand swimmer to be self-coached potentially. I don't know of any others. So yes, it is unusual, and it makes the whole experience a lot more exciting because everything I kind of earn is on me or lose is on me. But I do have to always say that it's definitely not a solo mission. Like, yes, I tend to write the macro plans and I've got the vision of what I want my training to look like, but I've had so much support. So there's no way I think I could have done this without very supportive people and very knowledgeable people.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And so when you're coaching yourself, I imagine it's a combination of positive self-talk to motivate yourself and champion your own abilities, but also give yourself constructive criticism. So how do you sort of balance those two?
I've learned not to trust everything my body's trying to tell me. So I think it's been a really interesting journey where I've got, say, the set plan, but because I'm older and I'm working particularly around shift work where there's a lot of stress and potentially disruption in sleep patterns, if I'm really fatigued, I rather than say, "Oh, I do need more rest," because that's important as you get older, particularly for recovery and trying to come back stronger, I would just go to the gym or I go to the pool and I'd do the warm up and begin the main set or the main lift. And if I, more often than not, I actually felt great. So I would continue with the session and have like pretty good results. So I think one of the most surprising parts of the self coaching journey had been curiosity and not trusting that you're really tired all the time, or really starting to challenge these notions of what your capacities really are, because sometimes I really did need that rest, but other times just being a bit tougher. I think I've got no expectations, and that was one very big confronting thought pattern to get over at the start, was that I started to build all these ideas of what if I don't achieve this? What if I don't do that? And it was quite liberating to be like, who cares? Like, I'm 33, I'm doing this for a bit of fun. If I fail, like, yeah, it'll suck, but I'm not gonna be devastated by that news. And I think that's been a really positive side of my second life in swimming, is that I'm much more balanced. So, like, I see a lot of friends and family, I go to events. It's not, swimming is life. And for me, and I think my personality, that works really well. When I'm hyper focused, I think it can be a lot, and it works for some and it doesn't for others.
It sounds like a very healthy approach. Yeah, and so you're writing your own swim programs, I imagine, each week. And are you writing your own strength programs in the gym as well?
I am. So I did a personal training certificate about 5 years ago and didn't use it until recently. So that's been really fun. I definitely pick the brains of my fiance, who's a physiotherapist. He's very knowledgeable and trying to balance my programs, because I would often have, maybe it was biased to one side of the body, or I didn't have enough, say, rotational or anti-rotational core movements embedded in those programs. So he's been really good at just the finesse of the sessions that I'd built. And he's really helped me to develop both my own sessions, but also my coaching capacities, because I've got a few online clients that it's helped them as well. So it's been, yes, I do write my own programs, but it's been pretty cool picking the brains of other people that have been in the sector for longer.
Yeah. And I'm curious to know, and it probably differs week on week, but what sort of percentage of your training is swimming based and what percentage is strength based, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So this year with the world's build up, I did slightly more swimming because I was focused on my technique a lot more. Swimming is so unique in the environment that we work in, right? So the water moves so differently. You can't just get your technique better on dry land. So I think I was swimming anywhere between 3 and very rarely about 6 times a week. And then gym would always be a consistent 4. So it did kind of vary throughout the season. So I started with less swimming and then built it up, and it kind of almost did a mountain peak in terms of building up the volume of swimming and skill based acquisition, and then tapered a little bit. My first year back, I kind of wanted to challenge the narrative, so I swam little. Like, I think I was in the gym 5 or 6 times a week and only swimming 2 or 3, and I was still smashing my lifetime bests. And so that was a very, I didn't expect that outcome with such little swimming.
Yeah. And whereabouts do you do your training? Like, you don't have to say the exact pool, but you're in Auckland, is that right? So, are you training in indoor pools or a mix of places?
It's a mix. So I would mainly swim at one of our premier indoor pools, but it's actually quite fun. So there's the big competition 50-meter pool, and I used to train there a decade ago. But there's actually a small and a warm learn to swim pool that's like 33 degrees. I actually did a lot of my training in this learn to swim pool because it was warm, and the training sets that I do are hyper focused on the 50-meter. So I would swim sets of 15 or 20 meters and have 2 or 3 minutes rest. So in that big pool that I'm so used to, I would get cold. And
Mm.
I don't know, it was actually quite fun being in this little kiddie pool, just absolutely ripping max effort, 50-meter pace. And then I do swim in an outdoor pool, which is really close to me. That's actually where I've just been. And it brings again, like what I was talking about with balance. I think swimming outdoors is such a unique experience, particularly doing backstroke. I do tend to hit the lane rope a little bit more often, but it just, I don't know, you feel more in the environment, more grounded. It's similar to a bushwalk, or, when you get your feet on the grass or the sand. It feels great to swim outdoors.
Yeah, cool. And I know you do a bit of open water swimming as well. Is that more as a coach, or do you do it sort of for your own personal swimming as well?
Own personal swimming. Yeah, I just enjoy, my partner and I do a lot of we go to the beach in the morning and do 20 strokes one way and then 20 strokes the other and go get a coffee. So
Oh,
it's
nice.
not big volume training. I will definitely get back into the ocean more often, when my, what do you call it, sprint career is done. So
Yeah,
I love the open water, but it's not conducive to, top end speed.
yeah, fair enough. And I know that your specialties are, if that's the right word, are freestyle and butterfly, right? Like that's what you've qualified for in the past, the 50-meter sprints. And so I'm very much a freestyle swimmer. I'm pretty confident with my freestyle now. Butterfly, I tend to avoid like the plague because I've never really learned to do it. And anytime I attempt it, I feel like I'm dislocating my shoulders. do you do you have any tips for someone like me who is curious about butterfly but a little bit hesitant to give it a go?
We're thin. But first and foremost, like always, if you haven't learnt butterfly, I use tools all the time with my beginner and intermediate athletes. So big soft fins, and then it is all about rhythm. So you can break it down, get used to the undulation of the butterfly kick first. So doing a range of the side butterfly kick, trying to get that even kick forward and back with the hamstring activation, butterfly kick on the back. You should feel your core doing that a lot. And then also butterfly kick with the arms by the side, just on the stomach. Because I think without a strong butterfly kick, it can be quite challenging. With the arms, there's a few different drills to start to get the rhythm, but it is such an interesting stroke because it weaves strength and rhythm perfectly together. So if you've got both of those things, it feels awesome and you love it, but it does take a long time. But I think as long as you can safely build up to it without getting shoulder pain, it's definitely worth it because it is such a cool stroke. And I actually, when I came back 2 years ago, I was only swimming the butterfly for fun, and I've always loved it, and the reason I did it a lot of my training was just for strength, actually, because it's so hard, and it just randomly paid off in the event.
That's awesome. And so related to that, you spend a lot of time coaching other people, I know, and you have your own business where you also do virtual coaching, which is, I assume it's where people send you videos of their swimming, and also you provide online content that other people can watch and subscribe to. When did you decide to set up your business?
It came off the back of my social media, so I started my page, or a move I can't a few years ago now, and it was just my way of sharing knowledge about swimming, and it honestly just resonated with people and kept growing, and that kept fueling my interest, and I found it so fascinating to try put my head or think about what it would be like to be a beginner, like an adult onset learner, or whether it was like a former elite swimmer getting back into masters. So I was kind of crafting content for all these different people. And from that, I thought, well, if people are resonating with free content and I love it, like it would be a dream come true basically to make a side hustle from my passion. So it's grown from there and it's definitely taken a long time. And I tend to get excited and go one way and then the other. And it's been a bit of a journey, but it's going really well now. And the online guys are awesome. So it's primarily like a squad essentially. So it's a lot of programmed swim sets. We've got an online forum, chat and connect in there with some challenges. And the strength side, I think, is one of my passion points as well. So that's been growing. And I think that's been quite a cool opportunity because you've got capacity to really push or regress people depending on what they're capable of.
Yeah, interesting. And we should say that on your Instagram, you've got almost 70,000 followers, which is massive.
Yeah.
And I'll link to it in the show notes so people can go and find it. And like you say, you're posting a lot of content. It's sort of how to content, and it's usually videos of your swimming, and you're giving people advice. And I don't want to gush too much, but your swimming is amazing. Like obviously you're very accomplished, but just to watch it is such a pleasure because you're just moving with such grace and ease through the water. There are people who are fast swimmers, but they're creating a lot of, it just looks like they're working so hard. They're splashing so much. But to watch you, it's like watching, it's almost like a work of art if that's not um, overstating it. But yeah, I definitely recommend that people go and check it out.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind. That's
Yeah, it's very
right.
inspiring. And I know that recently you coached your dad as well. Would you like to talk a bit about that? Because that's really
Oh,
cool.
absolutely. That was probably one of the coolest experiences. So my dad turned 65 last year, and he just kind of mentioned offhand about maybe doing the Masters. And bearing in mind, like, my dad has never done a swimming event in his entire life. Like, he literally learnt to swim out on the farm in a river. Like, his brother taught him to put his arms over and kick like anything. So it was just so much fun because he was so motivated and so adherent with the sessions, but the sessions I was writing him started at 400 meters, and I think our longest session was about 900. So trying to keep them purposeful, but, you know, I suppose at his level was really fun as a coach, and to actually see him change because he sent me through a few videos of his dive and his sprinting. And, a few technical changes when you have never swum competitively, the changes happen so quickly. And I tell you what, I was so nervous at the actual nationals. So he was at the Masters Nationals, just one event, the 50 freestyle, and I was just like, "Please don't break, like, don't fall into the water early, don't," and he swam 15 seconds faster than his first time trial.
That
So that's
is
on him,
ma
but I'll be like, "Yeah, that's partly hopefully it's somewhat of the coaching."
Oh,
Uh,
I'm sure it is.
yeah.
That's huge. That's a huge change in time.
So I'm trying to now convince mum and my brother to do a full, Quilter relay at the next Masters. But then I think what makes it particularly special was, it dad's just changed so much. He almost passed away last year. He had a freak medical accident, and so for him to take on something like this and actually, like, do it, it was the coolest 40 seconds of my life. I think he ended up with, like, 39.4 or something in the 50 free.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
like, all the more special that it's your dad, right? Like, family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even, like, before the race, I'm trying to put his cap on, so I'm holding it on his forehead, and I'm like, "Make sure that your goggles don't have the cap underneath, otherwise they'll leak," and we did a couple of practices because to reposition the goggles because that's quite a personal thing, and you don't want them to come off. It was so much fun because he's been, like, my biggest supporter. He was, like, the starter in Gisborne for my brother and I, like, came to every competition, loved to watch us train, but there was no pressure on us either, and I think if I could speak to any swimming parents, and a lot of my friends who did really well, we've had supportive parents, but not overbearing. So it was always an expectation that if I didn't train, mum and dad would stop paying the fees, but they didn't really care whether I swam or not. And I think that gave us the freedom, my brother and I, to really explore our, like, athletic capacities without the stress of needing to win. Because I wasn't particularly good until I was, early teenager. I just loved the process of training. I think having supportive parents that weren't forcing us to achieve was such a cool experience.
Yeah, that's awesome, and speaking of sort of the older generation, like, people I swim with range in age, I think, from their 30s to their 80s here in Wellington, and I'm in my late 40s now, so it's really cool to see older people, not necessarily old people, but, older people swimming and continuing to swim. Like, it's the kind of sport that you can keep doing, right? And that's really cool to see.
I think that's one of my favorite parts about swimming. So it's just so kind on your body. Like, yeah, you get some overuse stuff through your shoulders, but the Masters World Champs, I think they have like octogenarians there, right? Like the over 100-year-olds. And I think you're so right. It is so special.
I read somewhere that your favorite quote is, "The water doesn't know how old you are," and I really like that.
That's from Dara Torres. So that book is phenomenal if anyone wants a swimming read. So she was an American athlete and she actually was overshadowed, of course, because Michael Phelps won 8 golds, and rightly so. But she was 42 years old at that Olympics and she won silver in the 50 free and she lost the gold by point zero 0.01. Like, 42 years old. I don't
Wow.
think many people even know that happened. And she had a 2-year-old in the stands watching her, like her child. She's an incredible athlete, like, no normal 42-year-old will do that. She had been to 5 previous Olympics, her first on debut at, like, 15 years old. But when you read her book, you understand it's an insight into a really elite mindset.
Wow. I hadn't heard of her, and do you know what the book's called? I can look it up.
Age is just a number.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Cool. And I know another thing you've been sort of curious about is ice swimming. And I read that you're a current world record holder in ice swimming now. So do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, that was another really fun thing. I'm quite a curious person. I work as a nurse, so physiologically and scientifically, I was quite interested in your response to cold exposure. And I just saw it on social media, to be honest. I swimming, I was like, wow, like I find swimming 100 meters very easy. There's not much challenge to it. But if you put me into 2 degrees, I don't know like what would happen. And it was actually quite fun because my build up, obviously I'm based in Auckland, and I did all my training basically in a ice bath. So I started off just with acclimatization, sitting in this ice bath, and then I gradually worked up to putting my face in. And the craziest part of that training was the face in was actually tolerable. When I started practicing blowing bubbles, and so I'm like in this ice bath, blowing bubbles, pretending to roll to breathe, the bubbles hitting my forehead, it was like being punched. Like the pain of that cold was actually really surprising. And when I was rolling to breathe, like even getting used to trying to relax and breathe, because you get like things called like jaw retractions and all your carotids get quite cold. And so that was quite an experience. And then the actual community down there when I got there, they're just so supportive. Like you've got people you've never met cheering for you, and you can hear everything because there's no tumble turns. You have to touch and go. So you hear everyone calling your name. But I think that was quite funny. I'd only entered the hundreds, and when I got down there, the vibe, I got a bit competitive and wanted to enter the 500, got through that and said to one of the more experienced ladies, Susan Sherwood, who's awesome, said, do you think based on the 500 I would finish a K? And she said yes. So I was like, send it, let's do it. So 1,000 meters in 2.1 degrees. And I think for me, one of the strangest experiences is I swim with a lot of feel, so I like to swim with my eyes closed a lot of the time because you can focus on whether your core's engaged, whether you're symmetrical, your kick timing. But I'd be watching my hand swimming this K and I couldn't feel anything. And even for a few strokes, I was going like finger, like little finger down, thumb down, nothing. I was so cold that you just had to hope you were swimming well. And the other thing, I got so cold, I was having to rotate like to 90 degrees just to, I suppose, get my arm over in the recovery. And then the actual recovery after I finished was unlike anything I've ever experienced in my life. So, for people that have never heard of ice swimming, there's a thing called after drop. So, it's actually quite dangerous. Hopefully, I'm doing it justice in trying to explain, but essentially, when the body gets cold, all your blood vessels constrict so that they keeps the warm blood around your center. So this is what they think happens, the hypothesis anyway. So as the body starts to warm and those extremities, the little arterioles and the vessels in your fingers start to open, all that cold blood goes back into the center, and it can actually suddenly just um, actually cause, so some people have had pretty poor outcomes from that. But it was the most intense experience where I had to just accept my body, I had to allow my body to save me, essentially. Like, the shaking was so uncontrollable, I can't even describe it. You can't drink anything because 'cause you've just got, it's called thermogenesis, so it's just shivering, right? But it's just shivering on a whole different scale, and that took a couple of hours, I think, to fully recover, but that was an experience, and I would actually recommend it. Like, I know that sounds awful, but that was 1,000 meters, and I love a good challenge. For anyone that's, a competent swimmer, doing 100 meters is such a thrill because you get out, you're cold, but you're just so energized, and it was awesome.
Yeah, it seems to be a growing thing in New Zealand. Like I know more and more people going down to participate in it. I don't know if I will personally. I'm very interested to hear about it though. Like how do you sort of psych yourself up to get into that very cold water in the first place? Like do you have sort of a mental process that you go through?
It was mainly focused on breathing because you get a cold shock response. So you tend to inhale quite quickly. So you get in the water because there's no diving. The first thing I'd do was do a long exhale and put my face in the water. And that was kind of just to get used to the cold. Because as you're holding onto the edge, there's literally ice, like sheets of ice on the side of the pool. So for me, there wasn't much of a mental game, much more in competitive swimming. Like I've got keywords that I use to stay in the moment and not too nervous. For ice swimming, it was very much physiological because that was my biggest challenge. So it was more on breath control, and if I could control my breathing before the start gun went off, I knew I'd be fine.
Would you be willing to share some of the keywords you use, or is that more of a personal thing?
Oh, no, absolutely. For dive, I have keywords for training and for racing. So at the World Champs, I used cool, which was just I knew that I'd be quite nervous. So trying to relax and just cool meant that like I was cool headed or, just cool on the start. And then um lock was another good one that I used to use a lot in training because in sprinting you really want to lock the core on. So really focusing on drawing like navel to spine and locking the core on. Lift was one for my dive. So when I dive, I tend to just flop a little bit. So lift meant to try get my sternum up to try get a little bit more flight time. Um, yeah. So a few different ones, but it's quite fun as long as it's a short, sharp word. Because one of the most challenging things for swimmers is paralysis by analysis, and you just get 100 different thoughts because you've gone onto Aura Move and you've seen 10 different ideas. You've gone onto effortless swimming, you've seen 10 different ideas, and you're thinking about them all as you're swimming, and it's just too much. So when I coach my guys, I've got quite a rhythmical process we go through, but it's about isolating one key technical point and then one limb as well. So if you're working on your catch, just your left arm and really trying to feel the sensation and playing with extremes, right? We get less creative as we get older. So what does it feel like if you just almost like touch your shoulder on the way through on your catch versus going a dead straight arm and then something in between. So that's gone a bit off track. But yeah,
Oh,
keywords.
I like that paralysis by analysis. I can relate to that.
Yeah. And as a coach, you can actually see it when someone is thinking a lot, that they're so much stiffer. They hold their body and there's a little bit of hesitation and yeah.
Cool. And one thing I was going to ask is, I've recently bought my first smartwatch, and I'm enjoying the data analysis side of things. So, how do you track your own data when you're swimming?
I don't. I press go when I get in the water and then I press stop at the end. So it's quite funny because I coach a lot of triathletes who are constantly start, stop, doing their laps. But I grew up old school, the big clock that spins round. So I'd
The
go.
pace clock, yeah.
Yeah, pace clock. I just use that for leave cycles, but then that's another really unique part about my journey is I basically trained blind. So when you're in a squad, you've got the benefit of timed sets. So on the stopwatch, the coach is giving you, exact seconds and split seconds if you're doing sprint training. I literally just went on feel and a little bit of video. So I had someone kind of film me. I'd have a look and be like, oh, something's not quite right. Near the end of the season, particularly when I made the national team, I did have access to some coaching, like some timing. But yeah, in terms of data, the primary data metrics that I track are steps because I like to make sure that my daily there's an acronym for it, TDE, your total daily expenditure, I think. As long as I'm around that 10,000, I think that's quite good. I track my sleep and my HRV, and that's about it.
I read that you mentioned earlier that you've represented New Zealand in the Life Saving World Championships, and that you're a black fin. So, what is a black fin?
It's just the name for a national team member. So if you make the New Zealand swim team, you're an aqua black. If you make the New Zealand surf lifesaving team, you're a black fin. So I was on the black fins team from 2012 to 2016. And I
And
think that
yeah,
was
sorry.
actually such a cool experience because in 2014 I was on the Commonwealth Games team and on the surf lifesaving team. And both elite level. Obviously, swimming's a lot more popular global sport versus surf lifesaving, a little bit less global. But the team dynamics are just so different. And I feel like I learnt and grew so much from taking aspects of both cultures, the professionalism and things inside the swimming and the structure around training and when you're eating and recovering versus the surf lifesaving, because you've just got to adapt, particularly the guys on the beach, because you can't swim perfectly when there's a 6-foot swell or something. Like the beach athletes brought so much fun and lightness to sport and they were still so good. And I think that helped me to have a little bit more joy in my swimming because yes, you do definitely need structure and to be taking things seriously. But taking things seriously doesn't mean you can't have fun. And I think that was one of my biggest challenges going into the world champs was trying to maintain the joy that I've had from swimming and not get, I suppose, like beat down by personal expectation. Like once you're on a national team, obviously a lot of people want to be where you are. So there's definitely pressure to perform. And I think setting another personal best over there in the freestyle, like that felt like I'd done my job and I felt like I'd done what I'd trained for. And that was a very proud moment for me.
Yeah, that's really cool. And speaking of swells, I watched a video recently on your Instagram where you talked about helping somebody build their confidence in the open water, and that was really lovely. You know, helping somebody achieve something like that.
Yeah.
That must be so rewarding.
That was definitely my peak of last week. So Monica is my, flatmate's partner, and she, seriously almost drowned when she was in high school. So a lot of people that almost drown, they have, like, a little bit of a scare, but she, like, was with a high school group, and it made the newspapers. Like, there was a group of them in the sea for a few hours. So she's got quite a history with swimming, and so we've been swimming together once a week at the pool, and then that was her first ever ocean swim, and like, I gave her the option. We kinda said, "I don't care if we go in there and go out and don't even take a stroke, like, it's fine." So we started quite shallow and just said, "Let's go 5 minutes, see how you feel," and she was amazing. So I said to her, "Do you want to swim out to that pink buoy?" And I'm not great at estimating distances. I think it was probably about 200 meters offshore, like a decent way, and you could, like, see the fear in her eyes, but then she was like, "Yep, we can do this," and I said, "Even if we get halfway, we can turn around." But yeah, she made it all the way around that buoy and back in, and it was so awesome, and I think that was the best part of my entire week. But also random skills when you go into the open water because I forget how much I learnt from surf lifesaving. So I grew up at Wainui Beach. Dion is a legend, he was my coach, but he taught me to respect the ocean, but how to work with it. So Wainui gets a lot of big surf. So we were taught from nippers, from 5 years old, to go under to hold onto the sand until you felt the wave go past, and then come up, take a breath, watch where the next wave is, under, hold on, push off the ground. And Mon didn't even know about that. And Takapuna had waves for the first time in like ever. So it was quite fun to teach her like the waves, even if they're 9 foot tall or maybe 6 foot tall, you go under, as long as you can hold on to the sand, you're gonna be absolutely fine. It's not gonna rip you off the bottom. So it was quite fun teaching her some surf skills as well as the confidence to swim out to that buoy.
That's a really interesting tip. I didn't know that one about holding on to the sand when
Yeah,
the
yeah. Yeah, definitely. Because you get used to the rhythm of it as well. Because you wanna go under with time, but you'll feel the pull, you'll feel the wave go past, and then you go up after that. If you come up too early, it drags you back as well. But yeah, hands in the sand.
hands on the sand.
Yeah,
Easy to remember.
yeah.
And earlier we were talking a bit about strength training, and a few weeks ago I sprained my back. Not too badly, but I was learning how to do flip turns for the first time in my life in the pool, and probably not doing them particularly well. And so I've been seeing a physio, and he said that my back muscles are very stiff, which is very common for swimmers. And so I've been doing the old foam roller and all that sort of stuff and strengthening exercises. Um, so for your own strength building, are there particular exercises that you think swimmers tend to neglect that they should focus on? That's a very broad question, but
I think as long as you do the key movements, so your push, pull, hinge, and squat, lunge. So hinge particularly is quite good for the posterior chain, so deadlifting. But deadlifting comes with a lot of risk if you don't have the form down. So you can kind of modify that in different ways to reduce the risk. But in terms of back immobility, I think a lot of thoracic range of motion is really important. So I actually sometimes do more dry land than swimming for my sessions. So I think that's something that's very, very different about my process now. In the competitive world, we did do pre-pull, but we do some med ball work, which was awesome, and some core work. Actually, there was one squad that was very good. The others, it was kind of left up to yourself. And unless you were very motivated, you'd kind of just do a hamstring stretch and get in. Now I'm very structured with my pre pull workout. So I do anywhere from 10 minutes to 40 minutes before I get in the water, and I structure that with some active dynamic stretching. I move more into strength and stability based exercises, and then finish with HIIT, so like explosive push ups and jumps. And then when I get in the water, I feel so much better. But I think with swimmers, a lot of that thoracic rotation work is really, really beneficial. Doing things like thread the needle, even cat cow to get extension and flexion through the spine. But a lot of it as well is because we breathe shallow a lot of the time in swimming, often it's actually breathing mechanics. And globally, there's actually a huge amount of people that have got breathing pattern disorders. So we tend to overbreathe. So we breathe more frequently than we should. And we tend to breathe up high into the chest rather than diaphragmatically. When you swim, that's one thing I've changed my perception of. Obviously, if you can breathe diaphragmatically quickly, that's awesome. But it's a short sip of air when you swim freestyle. So often, I'm an advocate for shallow breathing because it means that you minimize your time to neutral, how much time it takes you to breathe. But as long as you revert to belly breathing diaphragmatic in day to day living, that's quite important. And swimmers tend to, or well, I do, preferentially breathe through the mouth because I'm so used to training and I had a history of asthma that breathing through my nose is not necessarily natural. And so learning to breathe properly, surprisingly, is very beneficial. And I'll try to keep the story short, but I had some neck problems a few years ago when I was still swimming competitively. And the physio that I saw addressed it through teaching me to breathe better. And my like trap pain went away because it turns out that I was stressed, I had a lot going on, I was breathing really shallow, and everything kind of bound up. So it was kind of crazy to think that I had attributed it to my technique when in fact I just had poor breathing mechanics.
Mm. Interesting. Breath work is so important for swimmers, isn't it? Because if you haven't got the breath right, then nothing else will work either.
Absolutely.
You mentioned earlier that you're very competitive, which isn't surprising because you're a competitive swimmer. But I was curious to know with the ice swimming, for example, like you gave it a go, and you did phenomenally well in it. So is that something now where you would feel like, okay, I've done that, now I'll move on to the next challenge, or will you continue to return to ice swimming each year?
That's such a hard one, because I actually really don't like the cold. So the competitive that was part of the challenge. The competitive side of me for the ice swimming was intra-competitive. So I'm very competitive with myself. I'm actually not very inter-competitive. So if you get up on the blocks, you're like, "All right, I'm gonna crush that person next to me. They've got nothing on me." It's not actually that great. Like, when I focus on trying to beat myself, like, that's when I excel. So the competitive side of the ice swimming was, can I swim okay? It wasn't necessarily, can I try and beat the person next to me or whatever. Um, so in terms of, like, when I return, I think my event selection is based off what brings me the most joy at this stage because I've been so lucky. I had, you know, 20 years of competitive athleticism. I was a full-time athlete for like, 6 or 7 years, and that's a pretty unique experience to get to do that, and I'm so appreciative of that. And so I know what it takes to be really focused, so I'm very aware of getting too serious again because I've got a lot more going on right now. Like I'm getting married in April. We've got our first house. Like there's a lot of things that I don't want to miss out on anymore that I would have been more than happy to miss out on in my first swimming career, which I also think is important. So if you want to be an Olympic champion, I think there's no way around it. You have to give up a lot, and I think that's normal. But I'm a bit older now, so in terms of event selection, it's what do I feel like doing? I'm doing a high rocks and a 10K run early next year, and I think I actually might go back to competitive swimming. Like literally, I did an interview 2 weeks ago and said no. So who knows? Who knows? Yeah,
That's cool. And with the ice swimming, you mentioned, you had an ice bath and you were acclimatizing, getting your body used to those colder temperatures. And I was just thinking about that because I was in Auckland. Like I'm not an ice swimmer, but I was in Auckland last week and I had a swim at Takapuna Beach. Actually, it's really beautiful.
it's beautiful.
But I was thinking, oh, this water isn't as cold as I'm used to because I swim in Wellington. The water, just the temperature's a bit lower here, and And so did you find that when you were training for your ice swim that you became less tolerant of the warmer water? Like how did your body sort of change as you adapted it?
Yeah, didn't notice a change in the warmer water. Like, full disclosure, I think I did 2 ocean swims in my build-up. Like, I trained in the swimming pool in 27 degrees and in the ice bath to get used to the cold, because I figured if I train specifically for a 100-meter freestyle, but my body understands what it feels like to be in that, I had no option to swim in anything close to sub 5 in the North Island, or maybe in Taupo or somewhere, but also, like, it feels quite weird to go to a lake and do, like, a sprint. So a lot of those ice swimmers that do the longer events, it's specific to be able to go and swim for 10, 15 minutes. For me, my event that I was focusing on was hopefully gonna be a minute. Like, I would have loved to have been the first ice swimmer in the sub-minute for the women in the freestyle. I think I went, like, a 1:01, so maybe I do need to do another one.
So how many have you done so far? Is it 2 or just 1,
I've only
of swimming championships?
I've only done 1 ice swimming championships, yeah.
Yeah. And was that the one that was in the pool? Because I remember seeing pictures.
Yeah, it was.
Alternate, don't they, between pool and
Yeah.
the lake? Yeah.
Yeah, much more, attracted to the pool.
Yeah. Fair enough. It's your happy place.
It is.
Cool. Well, I think that's all my questions. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I've learned a lot. Is there anything you want to mention that I haven't already asked you about?
Um, Off the top of my head, not really. I can't think of anything. I'd just say, yeah, I think to almost recall what you said earlier, swimming is one of those activities you can do essentially until you die. Like, I will be swimming as late as possible. So I think it doesn't matter maybe if you're even a bit older trying to learn. It is something that can bring so much joy and also a bit of fun. So, like, trying to do something different, an ocean swim, a masters swimming event, an ice swim event, you get to meet some pretty amazing people and go to some amazing places around the world if you choose to do those different ocean swims or masters events. So I'm just really grateful that swimming is something that I've got in my life and will have for the rest of my life.
Did you, when you had your 8 years of non-competitive swimming, did you miss it at that time, or did you feel like you'd put it behind you and you were focused on other things?
Yeah, I didn't miss the competitive side at all. I still swam a lot with the triathlon squad, but it was definitely the right call. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Laura. And all the best with your training and your upcoming wedding too. Congratulations.
Thank you. It was so nice to chat.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Swim Chats. Please remember to follow or subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you enjoyed it, you can leave a 5-star rating and review, which helps other people find it too. Enjoy the water, and we'll see you next time.